The NBA's Most Valuable Player award has historically been decided by a combination of the following two things: the numbers and the story. And in this video, I'll be discussing why I think Joel Embiid is leading the MVP award race and how these two factors are impacting his chances of winning it. And just before we get things started, guys, it would be really great if you could subscribe to the channel and give the video a like, so thanks for that. So let's kick things off by looking at Joel Embiid's numbers this season. Now, as you can see, Embiid is putting up some pretty awesome stats. His net rating, which combines his offensive and defensive impact over 100 possessions, is extremely high. He's also number one in player impact according to NBA.com compared to other players who play 30 plus minutes a game. He's third in points per game and has shot excellent from both the field and three-point land. And here is something that I think is truly crazy. Of the top 30 scorers in the league, Joel Embiid ranks last in minutes per game, meaning that Embiid is averaging the third most points in the league and is doing that in a lot less time on the court compared to all the other elite scorers. On the other side of the court, his overall defensive stats have been extremely impressive, as you can see, and his foul rate is at an all-time low compared to his previous seasons. He's defending extremely well, committing fewer fouls than ever, and he's contributing to the 76ers being the third best defense in the league through the first 20 or so games that have been played. And finally, I'd like to point out that MVP caliber players are only considered candidates if their play translates to winning. And so far this year, of the 18 games that Joel Embiid has played, the Sixers have won 15 of those 18. That's an 83% win percentage, if you were curious. Is there anything else that I really need to add? He's the most impactful player in basketball right now in terms of winning and in terms of individual stats. So there's the stats for you. It's pretty clear that Embiid is definitely putting up numbers that are good enough to support an MVP run. But what about the other historically important factor in the MVP race that I mentioned before? The story. Does Joel Embiid have a powerful story behind him? Is it enough to carry him to an MVP award? We take a look back at, say, Steph Curry. Steph Curry's first MVP, where out of nowhere, he led the Warriors to the first seed in the Western Conference and put up unbelievable performances all year and changed the entire landscape of basketball with his shooting. Or perhaps Russell Westbrook becoming the first player since the Big O to average a triple-double over the course of an entire season, and leading his team to the playoffs, despite the departure of former MVP Kevin Durant. Or even Giannis, going from the 15th pick in the draft being seen as a project player, averaging under 7 points per game in his rookie year, to becoming one of the most dominant offensive players since Shaquille O'Neal. Does Embiid have that kind of story behind him? Well, actually no, he doesn't. His story's fine. It's nice. He overcame some significant early career injury woes, finally made his debut 2.5 years after he was drafted. And yeah, you could argue that's a great story. But it's a great story in the right context. But when looking at him under the MVP light, he's been producing at a high level his whole career. So there's been no crazy, unprecedented jump in his stats, or he hasn't revolutionized the game or made us change the way we think about basketball. He isn't dragging a subpar team to a high playoff seed. His story isn't a fairy tale, so to speak. And while you may think I'm painting this as like a negative thing, that's not exactly true. I genuinely think for the first time in NBA history, there is no hugely driven MVP narrative. And that goes for all the players that are contending for this award. Perhaps LeBron's 18th season is a bit of a story, or maybe Luka Doncic being as young as he is and in that category of player. But besides that, I don't really see any sort of hugely underlying story that makes me think, yeah, the media are going to vote for this guy because of this. And I think for the first time in a while, the story of this year will purely be basketball. Who can be the most valuable player in the league and lead their team to success in what will ultimately be probably the most unique set of circumstances that the NBA has ever experienced. The story of this year is applied to all the MVP candidates. And it's exciting because I really think that we're just going to crown an MVP without there being any huge tagline going with it. It will hopefully just come down to basketball, and that's pretty cool. So I think that in spite of not having a triumphant or transcendent narrative behind him, Embiid can and will win the MVP award this year. If he maintains this level of play and leads the Sixers to the first seed in the East, it's going to make it really hard for voters to vote against him. Anyway guys, that's my video for today. What do you think? Will Embiid win the MVP or is someone else leading the way? I personally think that he's going to win it, but let me know what you think. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.